2025 is over, so welcome to 2026 and my first full book review of the year. I thought long and hard about the book I was going to talk about, contemplated a brand new novel that is released on the 15th of January, which, if you're listening right now, is 2 days from now. And I realised that to talk about it too early would seriously restrict my conversation, and given the genre, the lack of reviews would make the episode a little bit too unbalanced. That said, keep your ear out for the next episode when I will be talking about it, because it's in my head almost constantly. So where does that leave me? Well, I could discuss the financial and emotional value of historical romances from the 1980s, but again, that is even more niche. Looking at my reading choices for the end of the year, the end of last year, it appears that fantasy is the path I am going to have to go down, at least for this episode. However, I do promise that this year I am going to try and keep a more even balance, with fantasy not swallowing up every single episode. I am also preparing a great mini-series for all the Stephen King lovers out there, titled The Stephen King Thing. Thank you, Lorraine, for that one. It will launch at the end of February with a co-host. We are going to be taking a look at his Castle Rock novels, starting with The Dead Zone. So keep your eyes peeled and your fingers on the play button for that. I am really looking forward to talking about King's incredible creations, including one he actually admits he forgot he wrote. But for now, let's get on with my first chunky novel review of the year. This week, I am travelling to a world where it's eternal night, vampires roam, magic is feared, and a deadly competition is the only way to keep the fanged demons from your city streets. Welcome to Solanis and the Libertatum, in the first of Chloe C. Peñaranda's Nytefall Trilogy. The Stars Are Dying. I'm Ray, an unapologetic bookworm, introvert, self-confessed hermit, and long-term depression sufferer. This is my quiet space to share thoughts as I make my way through my ever-growing TBR. Seriously, I had 11 books delivered this week. And join me as I explore stories one book at a time, with 100% honest and completely spoiler-free reviews. Welcome to my bookish world, and enjoy your stay. In a world abandoned by its celestial guardians and left to suffer a tyrant king's reign, all Astrea can recall are the fragmented memories of the past 5 years. She's determined to discover more about her past, even if that means leaving behind the only safety and security she has ever known, by venturing out into a world where bloodthirsty vampires are rumoured to roam. Making her way in an unfamiliar world, she encounters the mysterious Knight, who makes her an offer she cannot refuse. As Astrea accepts Knight's help, she is drawn in by his darkness, and she begins to wonder if she has struck a deal with one of the ruthless beings her people have always feared. Astrea's opportunity to escape this deal presents itself when she has to decide whether to take her friend's place in centenary celebrations of the Libertatum, a succession of trials hosted by the king, in which the 5 human lands compete for safety against vampires who hunt them down to drink their blood. Is fighting for the safety of her kingdom worth more than answering questions about her past? As always, I am going to keep the detailed discussion and my personal opinion about the plot, characters, experiences, and perhaps some of the underlying themes in the book in my review section at the end. And I am still going to maintain my no spoilers attitude so I don't ruin everything for you. For 2,000 years, the world of Solanis has been a graveyard for the light. It began with a celestial war between the gods that saw the stars physically torn from the heavens, leaving behind a realm draped in the eternal night. In this landscape of silver twilight and freezing shadows, the world is ruled by vampires and a tyrant king who maintains his grip through the Libertatum, a brutal centennial competition where 5 humans must compete to win a century of safety for their respective kingdoms. Estrella has lived in this world for 5 years. At least that's as far as she can remember. She woke up half a decade ago with no name, no history, marked by mysterious silver tattoos and scars she cannot explain and always has to cover up. Since then, she has lived in a gilded prison, a manor where she is kept isolated, controlled, and medicated by a man named Hector, who declares he loves her. While Hector claims to cherish and protect her, his affection is a shackle. He keeps her confined to the rafters and the shadows, completely stripped of any agency. Estrella's world shifts when she encounters a mysterious and alluring stranger named Night. Shrouded in darkness, he offers her guidance and maintains a shadowy role in her life, providing advice, hints at her potential, and vanishing without offering her answers to any questions. He is unlike anyone she has ever met before, the mystery, alluring, and confusing. Night is currently bound by a bargain to serve the ruthless king, acting as the crown's most feared weapon. When he finds Estrella, their connection is immediate and electric. He reveals that he can sense her soul and offers her a glimpse of her own hidden potential. The breaking point for Estrella comes when her closest friend, Cassia, is chosen as a competitor for the Libertatum. When Hector locks Estrella away for her disobedience, having gone to visit Cassia before she departs, her desperation to reach her friend drives her to a harrowing escape through the snow and woods. However, the journey to the Libertatum takes a tragic turn. Before the competition can truly begin, Cassia is killed by a soulless vampire. Consumed by grief, Estrella makes a decision that changes her destiny, taking on Cassia's identity and entering the Libertatum in her friend's place. Now she must navigate a labyrinth of danger within the city, facing trials designed to mirror the flaws of the soul: pride, greed, envy, lust, and wrath. She must navigate deadly puzzles and treacherous alliances with figures such as Prince Dristan and the fierce competitor Rosalind. All the while, Night's presence grows ever more tangible, providing guidance and temptation, though his true motives remain shrouded in shadow. As Estrella survives trials in poison gardens and seductive illusions meant to tempt her, she begins to realize that the Libertatum is more than a game. It is a riddle. The pieces she collects in each trial are parts of a literal and metaphorical puzzle, the Star Maiden's key. Estrella's life and future are balanced on the edge of a knife as she wakes up to who she is and who she has the potential to become. She realizes that the people claiming to care for her, love her as she deserves to be loved, are more jailers than lovers. They have hidden motives and are manipulating her for their own gain. They are, in truth, no better than her previous captor, Hector. To reclaim her life, she must decide if she is willing to unleash the monster within. As always, I promise no spoilers, so I am going to stop before I make the biggest revelation of the book. And if I told you about that, then I'd completely ruin this element and the book itself, and I don't think that is at all fair. And it is time for the Being Bookish public service announcement. I am not telling you about any of these books to influence you into reading something or not that you may love or not. I know that not every book is for everyone, and that's fine, because if we all read exactly the same thing, then there would be only a few genres on the shelf and zero growth would ever be made, which is a really sad thing. Think of all those books that you've been introduced to over the last few years or the last few decades that you would have missed out on if everybody read the same thing. Anyway, less of that. Let's see what others thought about The Stars Are Dying by Chloe C. Peñaranda before I get to my own feelings on the book. Jenna was one of only a few readers who gave it a low star rating and still finished it. She gave The Stars Are Dying a 1-star review and said, How do I even explain my experience reading The Stars Are Dying? I've read a lot of unoriginal books, but oh my god, this was on a whole other level. It took me months to get through this because not only was there literally not one element of originality to this book, but it's also just extremely dense. And trust me, I love a good indie book. I read the description of The Stars Are Dying and thought maybe I had found an underrated gem. Even now, I want to give it the benefit of the doubt, but it was so mind-numbing. The problem is that it wasn't just a case of lots of popular tropes crammed into an otherwise okay story. No, literally everything about this book is borrowed. The characters' motives, their dynamic, their dialogue, the writing style, elements of the world building, the story tropes, such as a deadly competition, and there was nothing tethering any of this together. If you can't give me originality, at least give the story some glue to hold it all together. Normally, I don't care about books being similar to one another because with the vast number of stories being produced today, of course some are going to come out alike. But this book is different. There's no way that you can take elements from every popular story in the last 5 years without realising. And because everything was borrowed and nothing was grounded, the pacing was all over the place. The pacing of the world-building explanations, fantasy plot and romance were genuinely unhinged. The first 200 pages were so slow, and then all of a sudden moving at lightning speed with crazy levels of info dumping, and don't even get me started on the back and forth reveals and allegiance changes of the last 100 pages. This review has no structure, and could definitely be more concise. For that I am sorry, but then again, that's the nature of this book as well. There is something so enjoyable about reading reviews, whether it's the extensive and effusive 5-star ones for a favoured fantasy novel full of gifs and memes, or the amusing 1-star reviews that pull a novel apart, finding fault in everything. If there's something that reviews on platforms like Goodreads and Storygraph and Fable prove, it's that no two readers are alike. These things are what make my world go around, seriously. Though, full disclosure here, I don't read reviews before I finished a book, even if I want to discover whether I'm going to like it or not, because opinions are incredibly different, and what one person is in love with could be my nightmare fodder. I'm not sure if it's the same for everyone, but sometimes a review can annoy me because it makes me realise something about a story that I may have previously glossed over. Maybe a niggling plot hole or a characteristic in the MMC that I would have ignored because he seemed initially appealing. The overall rating for books varies drastically, not only depending on the genre, but also depending on the site you're looking at and the number of reviewers. And that is definitely the case when it comes to The Stars Are Dying. The overall rating for this book is somewhat consistent across Storygraph and Goodreads, but it is also disappointing. On Goodreads, it has a 3.43, and on Storygraph, it has an overall rating of 3.35. I think that this is actually probably one of the lowest rated fantasy novels I've reviewed on the podcast. So buckle up, listeners, we may be in for a pretty bumpy ride. Like a considerable number of more popular fantasy and romantasy novels from the last few years, The Stars Are Dying and the 2 sequels, actually only one of the sequels, the second one is a bit different, were originally self-published back in 2023. After they found popularity on social media, specifically seemingly TikTok, the series was picked up by Bramble, with the paperback editions of the first 2 novels being released in 2025. I have to be honest, until this series was recommended to me in an Instagram group at the tail end of November, I had never heard of the series nor the author. The recommender absolutely raved about these 3 books and said that she frequently recommends it to people who want a new book to read. Did I buy the whole series? No, because the 3rd book is currently only available in hardback or ebook. However, I will likely be investing in the paperback of the 3rd, and we'll talk about why when we get to my opinion of the books and my review. Right now, the book has 26,326 ratings and 4,862 full reviews on Goodreads. And over on Storygraph, it has 5,086 reviews. For a book that found a trad publisher due to online popularity, that seems quite low, especially when you consider other fantasy novels that followed the same publication journey, such as The Wolf King, Direbound, and The Atlas Six. And I have to admit now that the last one on that list really and truly surprised me. I didn't realise it had been indie published first. I'll go into my opinion of the book in a little bit, but the lack of reviews, the lower rating, and the almost invisible aspect on social media, and I spend more time on there than I would like, is confusing. How did this series get picked up by a traditional publisher when it seems as though it's now almost invisible on the platforms that apparently built it? Investigation potentially incoming. Night Owl is as enthusiastic about the book and other works by Peñaranda as their name might suggest. They gave The Stars Are Dying a very happy 5 stars and said, "Where do I begin? Goodness, this book is incredible. I've no words to express how incredible this story is, and the new cast of characters are equally amazing. Not to mention a villain love interest. Chef's kiss. Night is the perfect mix of Luke from Addie LaRue, Patch from Hush Hush, and maybe even a bit of dark magician Howl from Howl's Moving Castle. You all know how much I love Raylan from Chloe's An Heir Comes to Rise series, and I hope you're ready to make room for yet another book husband to add to your lineup. Astrea is our new FMC in this world, and I absolutely adore her to pieces. Truly, I can't say enough good about her, and I'm excited for you all to go on this epic journey across Solanis with her. I connected with her right away from the start, and I felt, laughed, cried with her till the very last page. I can't wait to scream with you guys. Her dynamic with Night is utter perfection and top tier swoon worthy. I think that's all I can say for now without spoiling anything. If you are new to Chloe's books and have not yet read her AHCTR series, I think you will do just fine reading this without feeling like you're missing out on anything major. However, those who have read AHCTR, I think you will appreciate the little Easter eggs that are sprinkled throughout the story. These 2 reviews could not be more different. They are night and day. One reader absolutely loving everything about it and the other finding nothing but fault. However, as with most books, it seems that it was ever thus. Everybody has a different thing that they love, and not everybody is going to love what you do. Right, now I have mentioned what others are saying, here's what I really think about The Stars Are Dying by Chloe C. Peñaranda. No spoilers, just me being 100% honest. Did I like the book? Let me start by saying this. Had I not read a lot of what I would consider high-quality romantic fantasy over the last 12 months or so, then I would probably be jumping all over this series in enthusiastic glee, extolling the virtues of Night and Astrea and the other characters who make up the cast, even the bad guys. That was sadly not the case here. After a year of amazing books, actually probably more than a year if I squint and look at my bookcase, my eyes need testing, seriously. I can barely see anything that's in front of my face without my glasses on. I found this book and the story within a little lacking in pretty much everything. The story had so much promise. In fact, the beginning of the novel showed incredible potential. We have a young woman in an untenable situation, an abusive lover gaslighting her into believing he's doing everything for her benefit. She is secretly meeting with friends, hatching a plot for her escape, and at the last minute, she shows intense courage and breaks free of her bonds. So far, so amazing. And then we hit Cliché City, because what story about a strong woman has her maintaining great long-term friendships and a few moments of not being the centre of attention? I hate to say it, but introducing Cassia only to make her vampire fodder a few chapters later felt like a cop-out. And this isn't a spoiler because it is the narrative element that ensures Estrella is again centre stage, the girl who has to beat the odds to survive in a harsh world. Up until this moment, I honestly believed that we would get a strong story of female empowerment intertwined with a romance with terrifying vampires, a world on the verge of complete destruction, and a battle of wills in a competition to the death. It was at this point that the entire story devolved into something that felt so convoluted and muddled that I wasn't sure from one moment to the next what I was going to get. I turned the page and we're suddenly talking about something that was never mentioned before. Cassia was in love with her god, yet Estrella, a woman who was living and sleeping with someone, didn't notice. Was she that oblivious to the important events in her best friend's life? Or was she just not important enough herself to know this? And Cassia was also dying, apparently, yet her father, who knew of this, still sent her to take part in a competition that led to the death of so many. Did he not care about her? Was he that desperate that he would sacrifice his daughter? Did he not have any other warriors who could participate? People who had training and were still at their full strength? I found myself rolling my eyes repeatedly. In fact, I'm surprised I didn't pull a muscle. The further into the story I got, it was exhausting. And that's before the rather ridiculous revelation about Night, Estrella's mysterious guide, companion, future love interest, whatever he was going to be. I have read a lot of novels where the shadow warrior, for want of a better term, is the love interest. I read almost all of Laura Thalassa's Horsemen series, but I couldn't finish the last one. It was just so ridiculous. And while it still feels a little icky to consider these particular harbingers of doom as attractive and loving in any way, this is what The Stars Are Dying seemed to be attempting. Night shows up in weird places. Oh, yeah, okay. In weird place. That is not, yeah, strike that. That's not how I meant it to be interpreted. He shows up in her bedroom. Again, that sounds weird. He shows up when she is sneaking out at night. And around a third of the way through the book, we discover that he's not really with her at these times. Though sometimes apparently he can be. He is sometimes corporeal and other times not. There are hints that he's not corporeal during every one of their encounters, but the evidence is almost invisible unless you are rereading once you find out the truth about him and his situation at that time. As much as I really hate to say it, the whole thing is just unnecessary. Night and Estrella have a history. I'm not going to tell you anything that could be considered spoilery because I really don't want to spoil the book or the 2 follow-ups because you may like them. Yeah. I think that if I dig down deep enough, I know what my issue with this book and the sequel, The Night is Defying, really is. The book is not overly long at just 432 pages, and it feels rushed because of that. I'm not saying it needs to be longer. I'm just saying maybe it needs to be tidied up a little bit. Peñaranda could have written something amazing. The characters all have potential, the ideas are good, but everything is so condensed that what it could have been is completely lost. I know that I am currently reviewing the first book in this trilogy, but I do have to very briefly touch on The Night is Defying, the second book, because again, it had potential, and I read it because I could see the potential in the first book. There were moments when it could have truly shone and turned everything around. Seriously, instead we get confused dual POV, jumping around a second timeline, and I honestly believe that because of this, the series suffers. Often you can't tell when a book has shifted from self-published to traditional because the qualities that were there to start with just get better. You only need to look at some of the best sellers topping the list today to realise that these authors were already good, and luck and exposure on social platforms just brought them the attention that they already deserved. As much as I wish that this were the case, for me at least, with this book, it was not. So, what was all that talk about still getting the final book then, Ray? Seriously, you're probably thinking, are you insane? Well, I'm torn, if I'm honest. I have started and discarded so many series over the decades, including, but not limited to, ACOTAR, the Atlas Six, the Wolf Den Trilogy, and the Thursday Murder Club, all of which I can appreciate a lot of people love. I just struggled to get past the first, or maybe second in the case of one of these series, realising that they just were not books for me. The Nytefall series isn't for me. But now I have read the first two, I sort of need to find out if the flaws that I struggled with in these first two books are eliminated in the third. The Dark is Descending is actually the only novel in this trilogy that was released post the publishing deal that she got with Bramble. I am hoping that this means great editing, trimming the fat that doesn't appear to have been removed from the sloppy first two books, and ensuring that the flow of the story doesn't suffer because the table, chairs, and kitchen sink all have to have a role. Why did these books pretty much vanish from social media after gaining traditional publishing attention? I have a couple of theories. The first one is overexposure. When they were indie books, they were seen as the underdog. People love the underdog, the author competing for attention against big names like Rebecca Yarros and Sarah J. Maas. I have done the same thing with a couple of authors I feel are just as good as the ones with a big publishing contract. But when an author gets that big deal, things do change. I know that everyone says, when I get famous, I'll be exactly the same. And while that is probably the case when it comes to their behaviour, it doesn't mean that their books will be treated that way. They're marketed as for readers who love such and such an author. They have a bigger marketing budget. They get interviews, podcast presence, advertising banners, sponsored posts, etc. and so forth. And while they have not necessarily changed, the way their books are perceived has done. Looking on socials, I found the author promoting her books, highlighting the quality of her stories and really selling them to an audience who weren't familiar with her right at the beginning of her career. The authenticity of her posts, her enthusiasm about her creations, spawned a multitude of reviews, fan art, supportive responses, and sales. She hasn't disappeared off any platform. In fact, she's still as active as ever. But looking through the past posts, the newer ones have a much lower viewer and engagement figure. And surprisingly, she's only got a following of just over 80,000. I mean, I'm saying only when I've only got a following of just over 3,000 on Instagram. But I'm not selling a book. Viewership didn't exactly fall off a cliff, but it has certainly receded in the last few months. Ultimately, this trilogy, or at least the first two books that I've read, has a great deal of potential. But with only one book left to turn things around, is it going to manage to stay on my shelves until the end of the year? At the moment, I am doubtful. With so many greatly anticipated novels coming out in 2026, and more that have yet to be announced, including the sequel to The Raven Scholar and the sequel to Warrior Princess Assassin, space is definitely at a premium. If you enjoyed The Stars Are Dying or want to read something similar, try these. While I was thinking about this, I realised that there are certain tropes used in the Nytefall Trilogy that are familiar, and not just in fantasy. As I contemplated books that have a similar theme, having realised that I don't read dark fantasy, or at least I don't think I do, maybe I do and I haven't realised it yet, I started to split books into two camps. Books with a morally grey anti-hero like Knight, though I do have to stop myself from grimacing at his other names Ray Knight and Knight's Death, and books with a deadly competition where the price is freedom. In the second pile, because why go in order, we have the classic, and though it's not fantasy, I feel that the dystopian setting still qualifies as fiction, despite what's happening in the world at the moment. So, The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins. We have our central character taking part in a competition that will give her fame and the appearance of freedom if she survives, much like Estrella in the Libertatum. In Carissa Broadbent's Crown of Nyaxia series, specifically the first one, The Serpent and the Wings of Night, we have our characters battling each other for survival in the Kajari, a war for power and status. Of course, there are plenty more books that follow that particular theme, and some of them are incredibly well written, while others not so much. And I haven't read everything that exists either, so I could be missing quite a few. When it comes to the novels which show our heroine living a gilded cage life monitored by a so-called protector, who usually turns out to be a bad guy in disguise, we have novels like A Court of Mist and Fury and The Foxglove King by Hannah Whitten and One Dark Window by Rachel Gillig. I haven't read the third book in that list, but it is on my personal list to pick up at some point. I know that there are a lot more novels that could be on either of those two, fit in either of those two categories, but life is far too short. So please do let me know which books you would add and which books you've read and enjoyed that fit in either of these two categories. Because, as I said, I haven't read everything, and I am always looking out for something new to read, even though I do have a massive TBR and I'm constantly buying books. I have a problem and I don't actually want to solve it. Just this week, I celebrated 2 full months in my new role. I'm enjoying it. The people are great. The work is interesting. And sometimes I don't know if I'm going to finish on time because there is so much to do. I love being busy, so conferences, meetings, training sessions, and more are actually proving to be fun and a bit of a challenge, but not one I am bowing down to because I don't like to admit defeat. And that is just part of my character. When I was considering my second review for this week, I knew that I was going to struggle. The majority of the books I've read have been for a specific purpose, whether that's an interview, a book tour, or a future episode. I'm actually saving one book until it has been officially released. And the book I'm currently reading is the second in an extensive series, which I really do want to talk about at a later date in far more detail. Though I would normally wait until after the book tour to talk about something I have read, this book was published in the latter part of 2025, so there are reviews out there for the world to see, and I am not going to be spoiling anything. Solo by Caroline Swinburne is an interesting novel. It's contemporary literature, so I would probably group it in with novels by Abdul Razak Gurna and Catherine Newman, both of whom I adore. The novel is about Catherine, a talented and world-renowned horn player. At the start of the book, she is performing at the Proms, a famous and difficult solo, when she miscarries the baby that she and her husband had been longing for. No one in the musical circle she travels in seems to understand. In fact, the conductor tells her that she was selfish for destroying his first appearance with the symphony, and her husband tells her that she's selfish and irresponsible and that she killed their baby because she just had to perform. After the disaster, she loses her position in the symphony, her marriage ends, and she goes to live with her mother until she decides on the path she wants to take, which ends up being travelling to far-flung places as a Nytefall teacher. She leaves her mum with the mess, telling her to sell her prized horn, and leaving without looking back, because to do so would be to invite the pain she is feeling. Fast forward 10 years and she receives a phone call telling her that her mother has died after a stroke and she has to come back and sell the house that she grew up in. This is the moment where the story truly begins. We learn a little about what Catherine, now known as Kate, did during the 10 years she was away, but there is this taste of bitterness in everything. She looks down on the people she grew up with as though she decided, without knowing who they now are, that she is better than them. The irony is that while she is looking down on them, they are looking at her and seeing a snob, someone who is entitled, spoiled, and completely lacking in understanding. Despite all of this, the book is about growth, about self-discovery and letting go of the past. While she is packing away her mum's things, she finds the case containing her horn and is sent down a path she never really wanted to revisit. While all of this is going on, because if that's not enough, she encounters a young girl called Sarah who has incredible talent. But without the support of a determined mum, as Kate had, it seems that this talent could go to waste. I loved the dynamic between Kate and Sarah. it sounds weird saying that because I've actually got cousins called Kate and Sarah and their siblings, there were a considerable number of misunderstandings brought about by their own lack of knowledge about each other. For Kate, it's quite simple. Give up everything to become a musician because that's what someone with talent should do. That's what she did. While Sarah sees this as not only a selfish thing to do, but also something that only someone who didn't need food on the table or a roof over their head can afford. More than once, I wanted to slap Kate so hard, despite the hardness that she'd experienced in her past. She is surprised by the fact that people who stayed in the town she considered a dead end made something of their lives and are happy with the things that they've accomplished. The message with the book seems to be that you don't have to travel to the far-flung ends of the universe to find your happiness. You have to be secure in who you are, and things will start to work out. While I found Kate to be the most unlikable character in the bunch, her judgments and constant woe is me were quite irritating. I did also find times when I felt sorry for her. She didn't know what she had. Her romantic relationships are empty of emotion. Her life is devoid of anything that isn't for show on social media. Until, of course, she starts to open up to the people she's been looking down on and realise that the grass isn't always greener. Ultimately, Solo is a book that is about growing older, growing wiser, and learning to be happy with the things you have. Of course, this is only one review and my opinion, and there is a book tour taking place across X and Instagram with Random Things tours over the next few weeks. So if you want to find out more about what other people thought about the book and more about the story, do check out those tours because they are really, really helpful in making you think about different books. This year is definitely starting out exciting. In fact, this coming week, I am carrying out 2 interviews with 2 incredible debut authors in totally different genres. I also have 2 interviews to schedule in the next few weeks, so things are definitely moving where the podcast is concerned. And I'm hoping I'm not going to fill every single week with interviews, but it would be quite nice to have a few every couple of months. I would love to hear from you, and please do get in touch if there's anything you'd like to hear me talk about that is book related, of course. I have started to do weekly wrap-ups regarding my reading over on TikTok, and I am going to do my utmost to keep up to date with these. If you are interested, of course, in finding out what I read on a weekly basis. Sometimes it's loads, other times I'm like, well, I haven't even read half a book this week, but I'm going to talk about it anyway. And I am, of course, looking forward to sharing the first in my Stephen King Things series with you at the very end of February. I think it's about the 26th at this moment in time. So please don't forget to keep your eye out for that. Well, that's it for this week and this fortnight. Thank you so much for listening to the first episode of 2026. If you're enjoying the show, why not share it with your friends or family? And please do leave a star rating on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen, because it truly does help the podcast reach more people. I don't know why, but the algorithm seems to like it. You can find me on Instagram at BeingBookishPod, on X at being_bookish, and on TikTok at beingbookishreviews. If you prefer reading, head over to my website which I update weekly, and you can find that at beingbookish.co.uk. My 2026 reading tracker has just been added, and you can find all the links to the podcast in one place. Anyway, until next time, this is me saying farewell.